Today, the U.S. steps back from the brink with Iran. Now what?
Most of the world, to be honest with you, is probably in a wait-and-see mode. I think everybody's just holding their breath to see what actually happens.
With a meeting set for Friday in Pakistan, what are the prospects for a diplomatic end to the war? I'm Malika Bilal, and this is The Take. Hey everyone, today would be a really great day to subscribe to The Take on your podcast app. We ask because we want more people to get their daily news podcasts from Al Jazeera. And leave us a review. 5 stars helps other people discover the show you already know and love. Thank you.
I'm Imran Khan. I'm a senior presenter and senior correspondent with Al Jazeera English.
Imran, welcome back to The Take. It has been nearly 40 days since we last spoke. You and I sat down at the very beginning of this war. And now here we are again. We're speaking on Wednesday afternoon, Doha time. And like last time, you're just coming off of a shift telling the world what has happened with this potential 2-week ceasefire. And I say potential because we're seeing breaking news lines as we speak. But let's start with how this past day looked like from your vantage point.
Well, we started off with one of the most extraordinary social media posts any president, any world leader has ever posted. He's talking about destroying a civilization.
Donald Trump has posted just in the last minute or so on his social media saying, "A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will."
And that was preceded by an even more extraordinary social media post. There were swear words involved in saying, "You've got to open the street, you crazy efforts," and all of this. And it was the kind of language that was being presented was almost nihilistic. It was almost, this is a done deal. And it felt like that Donald Trump had made a decision to bomb Iran back to the Stone Ages, which is what he'd been talking about. And we were at this stage where everybody, on a personal level, I actually, when I read it, I screamed out loud in frustration because that's not how you do diplomacy. That's not how you talk to nations. That's not how you calm things down. And it felt like that the Truth Social post was designed for Iran to batten down the hatches and break all ties. And then we had this kind of, extraordinary Pakistani diplomatic effort. And then suddenly a complete about turn. We went from, civilization destroying threat to actually, I've got the 10-point plan now from Iran.
We believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. Almost all of the various points of the past contention have been agreed to between the United States and Iran. He then goes on to say, we are very far along with a definitive agreement concerning a long-term peace with Iran.
And the language changed within, hours as bombers were heading to Iran. And then suddenly this breakthrough. So it's been, we use the term whiplash diplomacy. It's been whiplash, just trying to keep up.
Of course, you are in Doha. What has the reaction been from people there? Because I know that there were strikes, or at least there was some fallout that caused some injuries.
During the announcement of the ceasefire and in just the aftermath here in Doha, there were actually very loud explosions that we hadn't heard for a couple of weeks. The sound of interceptors in the sky, and some debris fell on a house, injuring 4 people, including a child.
Just around the same time as all of this is going down, and it looks like there's going to be a ceasefire that's holding. So what have people been feeling, doing, and talking about?
Well, amongst my sort of friends and my circle of people that I speak to, there's a sense of relief, but also there's a sense of kind of deja vu, because we feel like people feel like they've been here before, not necessarily in Doha, but we've been through an American ceasefire before in Gaza. We've been through an American ceasefire before that was brokered for Lebanon, and neither of those have been particularly successful. There have been ceasefire violations every single day in those two places. So there's a sense of relief that maybe we are turning a corner, but there's a sense of nervousness that we may well be back here. If not in 2 weeks, then maybe in 6 months' time. Most of the world, to be honest with you, is probably in a wait and see mode, because Friday are the talks in Islamabad, supposed to be direct talks between the Iranians and the Americans, brokered by the Pakistanis. But everybody is, I think everybody's just holding their breath to see what actually happens on Friday.
All right. So, Imran, you mentioned earlier a 10-point plan that Iran submitted. What do we know about what the sides agreed to? All three sides, the U.S., Israel, and Iran.
Well, what we know is very much from the Iranian side, and Donald Trump saying it's a good framework to start with. So I think it's pretty accurate.
The 10 points outlined by state media, backed by Tehran's leadership, including U.S. commitment to ensure no further acts of aggression, continued Iranian control over the Strait of Hormuz, acceptance of uranium enrichment.
And then there's a compensation for reconstruction costs to Iran. Commitment to lifting sanctions on Iran, the release of Iranian funds and frozen assets that have been held by the United States, and again, an immediate ceasefire on all fronts, on approval of all of the above. And that includes Gaza and that includes Lebanon.
Okay, so there's this 10-point plan. The U.S. has called it a workable basis for negotiations. But many of the points that are in this plan don't feel like things that the U.S. actually will accept, including allowing further nuclear enrichment.
Well, like I say, this is a workable 10-point proposal. But all they're really agreeing on is that we are going to talk about these things. They're not agreeing that these things are going to happen. And some of it will get dropped. Some of it will change. Some of the language will get softened. Some of the language will get toughened. But as a good start, it's there. And the fact that Donald Trump has said it's workable suggests that he wants to end the war. He wants to walk away with a victory, and he wants to play the tough guy. Now, the tough guy he's doing through his social media posts, right? He can walk away with a victory if he can get Iran to compromise on some of these things, soften the language on some of these things, and then Iran will have to do that as well. It's, Trump's the art of the deal. And this is not a direct quote from the art of the deal, but it reminds me of a quote from the art of the deal. A good deal is when one party walks away happy. A great deal is when both of them walk away unhappy. I don't want to kind of trivialize it, but, Donald Trump is a proud deal maker. And I'm sure that he's thinking, I've got this 10-point plan. I can get a deal.
Okay, so then we are expecting to see how that all comes into play on Friday of this week. We're expecting to see Mohammad Ghalibaf, the Iranian Speaker of Parliament, and U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance in Pakistan on Friday for talks. What do you expect?
I expect, given talks that I've covered in the past, speaking to diplomats, is that there will be an initial discussion. Though there are some very technical things here. Uranium enrichment, for example, how do you deal with that? That requires, two people agreeing that they're going to do this. And then it takes technical teams to hash out the details. So what I'm expecting on Friday is a wide-ranging discussion from the two parties. I'm expecting to get a statement that says we have talked, we've made good progress. There are things that we need to work on. It'll go down to the technical teams. and the political teams. When I say the political stuff, how does the mechanism work for the Strait of Hormuz? Who is going to patrol it? Is Europe going to be involved? That kind of thing. Those will be discussed in smaller teams with Iranian and American negotiators. If, this follows traditional diplomatic norms, but as we know, Donald Trump's not a big fan of that. So, and JD Vance certainly is looking at the White House in 3 years' time. So he has an incentive. He wants to be able to say, I got this deal, and therefore I'm a good person to run for president.
Well, Imran, there are definitely some loose ends here, to put it lightly, even as this temporary ceasefire is in effect. And so let us talk about the other instigator in this war, that is Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, has been clear that this pause doesn't include Lebanon. As we sat down to talk, news broke that 100 airstrikes hit Lebanon and Beirut specifically, coming from Israel.
The military has just launched an attack on Beirut's southern suburbs. The assault targeted densely populated residential areas. Lebanese security sources say the latest Israeli strikes have been the heaviest since the start of the war.
We know that Israel has a history of hitting really hard before a ceasefire. This could be pre-ceasefire escalation. And we have seen in the past, the Israeli definition of a ceasefire usually doesn't involve a complete cessation of fire. So what was the reception to this news in Israel? What do we know?
Well, Israel came straight out swinging out the bat and said that Lebanon's not on the table. Pakistani said that Lebanon was part of the deal. And then about an hour later, Netanyahu said no. And now they're bombing parts of Beirut and other parts of Lebanon that have nothing to do with Hezbollah. The Israelis are flexing their muscles. They're saying, we want to prove to people that we can do that, and Donald Trump won't say anything, right? They welcomed the ceasefire proposal. They said that they were happy with what Donald Trump was saying. They were going to back Donald Trump, but they made sure that their backyard was still their backyard. Now, there is a pattern with the Israelis. Let's go all back to the very first Gaza ceasefire. The Gaza ceasefire, the very first one, brokered by the Qataris, was controversial because the Qataris went with an Israeli proposal to Hamas. Hamas agreed to it. The Qataris went back to the Israelis, and the Israelis said, okay. And then they changed it. And then Hamas said, but you've changed it after we agreed to it. We agreed on all of the points. And again, this is, an Israeli tactic, and I'm unsure what it actually gets them, other than keeping the other side guessing. But we don't have a board of peace that's negotiating, a ceasefire in Gaza right now in any serious terms. They keep talking about a ceasefire, but there's nothing on the table that either party can sign. Israel slowed it down. And indications are that Israel wants to slow this down as well. And Israeli opposition has already picked up on this. Yair Lapid, opposition leader, has already said that this just proves that Netanyahu's not in the room, sat at the table. And it's that, that great diplomatic quote that says, if you're not sat at the table, then effectively you're on the menu. And they're not sat at this particular table. So in order to give them a voice, give themselves, a seat at this table, even if it's not physically in Islamabad, is going to be doing something which we've seen in Lebanon and maybe even in Gaza, and coming out with stronger statements. Definitely, I think we'll see that happen before Friday.
So let's talk more in depth about what that calculation in Israel then means for Lebanon, because Hezbollah today paused attacks on Israel, which I think you could say signifies that their interest in being included in this ceasefire is cemented. And then, hours before you and I spoke, Israel unleashed what it called its most severe bombardment of Lebanon since it escalated against Hezbollah last month. It's striking 100 targets in 10 minutes all over the country. I had some residents posting online on social media that the strikes were apocalyptic. What do you think this means for the ceasefire?
It's a violent way of getting your point across. It's a way for Israel to say, we're in control here. Lebanon is our thing. It's not to do with the Americans. This is our security. This is our war that we are fighting against Hezbollah. But to go after non-Hezbollah targets and the Corniche on the sea, where, people who have been displaced are now living, civilians are now living, feels like to me, collective punishment for Lebanon. And that's what Israel does. We've seen collective punishment happen time and time again in the occupied West Bank, in Gaza. Israel also has the Dahia Doctrine. The Dahia Doctrine is named after the neighborhood in South Beirut where Hezbollah have a large presence. And it says that if there are civilian casualties, that's not in our calculus. We're going to attack anyway because it's our security. And now that has been expanded across not just Beirut, but across southern Lebanon and other areas. And there is no security reason for you to attack central Beirut. As far as I can see, the Israelis will justify this and they will say something that will be along the lines of we've hit Hezbollah targets, Hezbollah infrastructure, this, that. It may well blow up the ceasefire if the Iranians insist that Lebanon be a part of it, if the mediators can't get to some sort of, compromise, and if Israel still continues this. So there's where the ceasefire is going to blow up. It's going to be because Israel is acting like a wild card.
Yeah. So then, who do you think is under the most pressure right now to hold the line in the ceasefire, to make sure this actually does hold? Keeping the idea that this is the bombardment before the ceasefire is allowed to take effect for Israel.
That's a really difficult question to answer because you've got two very competing narratives. So let's take the American one, for example. The American Donald Trump has, chopped and changed his reason for the war constantly over the last 40 days. At one point, it was about the uprising at the very beginning. We need to get the Iranians to stand up against their oppressors. Then it was about oil. Then it was about nuclear weapons. And then it was about the Strait of Hormuz. And then it was about economics. So there's been no real raison d'etre for the Americans, no real strategy here. Israel has been absolutely clear. It wants the Iranian regime gone. It wants Iran to be inward looking, in chaos, because it's then not a threat to anybody else. And it wants Iran to stop being able to support its proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, as they're called. So there's two competing narratives there. So when you ask the question, who is going to hold the line? I think Donald Trump may well do a deal that gets him Iran, and I think he'll be very clear about this, more clear than any perhaps president has been for the US. He'll say to the Israelis, you come with me, support any decision I make on Iran, and I will let you do whatever it is you need to do in southern Lebanon, in Lebanon generally, in Gaza, and perhaps even the annexation, the full official annexation of the occupied West Bank. And I think that'll be the deal. And I think that's what, the language that's coming out of Israel, I think that's what they're really pushing. And that makes it easy then for Donald Trump to declare victory, because Iran is what people care about in the US. It's an unpopular war. Israelis fighting in Lebanon, they don't care about that. They care about Americans fighting on Iran.
Well, given that, my final question is, did Trump blink? Did Iran force him into accepting a deal?
Was it Iran or was it American public opinion? Was it increasingly deep distrust of Donald Trump that he's now seeing when it comes to war? Was it his Make America Great Again base that were splitting into pieces and then unified because of the Iran war? Was it internal pressures? Certainly, I think it's economic pressure. And I think Iran really, really weaponized the Strait of Hormuz and the amount of money it was costing the world. Pakistan, Indonesia, India, China, everybody is suffering that uses that strait. They were putting pressure on Donald Trump, but that pressure came from Iran. Iran knew that the Strait of Hormuz was the key. There is just as a quick aside here, there's a war game that the State Department play, that diplomats play. It's a very serious war game. It's a simulation. I've played it.
Mm.
And it's called Persian Incursion. It's a terrible title.
Wow.
But
Wow.
you play various parts. You play the UN, you play America, you play Iran. And one of the times I played this game, I was Iran. It was the very first thing I did. I shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Now, what I didn't do was attack my neighbors, but I shut down the Strait of Hormuz. And so for the president to be surprised that that happened suggests that he was either lied to or misled. And Benjamin Netanyahu, apparently, and this is according to reporting coming out of America, was sold by Netanyahu on the idea that this was going to be quick, that the Iranians were going to rise up, and this was going to be an easy Venezuela-style victory. And none of that happened.
Well, Imran, I'm grateful we have you to talk to break this down for us and give us some of the behind the scenes. I appreciate your analysis. Thank you.
No, thank you.